Good morning, participants. Let me take the opportunity to welcome you all into today's webinar, which is on researcher diversification strategy. My name is John Kinyuru. I'm the Director of Research at JKUAT, and I'll be the moderator of this session. So I think it's now 11. We want to start off. The others joining us will join us as we proceed. I want to welcome Dr. Amos Mbugua to quickly say something and introduce today's webinar and the speakers. So please, Amos.
Okay, let me just turn on my video and let's see, can I do this? Let's see. Okay. So yes, good morning. Thank you, Dr. Kinyuru, and everybody who's joining in. I believe others will be joining us as we progress. I'm just going to share a quick, I just want to share my screen very briefly as I introduce today's speakers. Let me see. Okay. Dr. Kinyuru, can I share my screen? I think I can't do that when you're.
Okay. Okay. Let me stop sharing. Okay. Good. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. No problem. So let's see. Yeah, so as I'm saying, I just want to make one or two quick comments, even as I introduce the speakers for the day. I don't know whether my screen is now visible.
Yes, it is.
Is it? Okay, good.
Yes, yes.
So I just make a few quick pointers that just to contextualize today's presentation. As we all know, you know, research is a process. It begins with important questions that need answers, you know, problems that require solving, and it typically ends with arrival to those answers, with answers to those questions that can be applied and essentially be useful to the community and world we live in. But what I just want to point out is that a critical step in this process is the design of a study that includes the assembly of all the required resources. And these resources can include, you know, background knowledge, the supplies, the logistics, the expertise, and importantly, the research funds. The reality is that these resources are found in different people, departments, and institutions. And the challenge that we often find is that these structures or departments, institutions tend to operate as silos. That is, separate, non-interacting entities that may be unaware of you know, unaware of the importance or the potential that lies in collaborative engagement. And so that really is what the point of this presentation today is, to identify the various stakeholders that are critical for us to be able to have more impactful research, to engage meaningfully, and to establish collaborative activities. And that's really my pleasure today to introduce IPA. I first got to know of them in 2018 when I was had the opportunity to participate in a dissemination seminar that they were conducting. And today, without further ado, I just want to give them, the team from IPA, the opportunity to tell us more about what they do and about the researcher diversification strategy. So Caroline, Jemima, all of you are welcome. And I'm going to stop showing my screen so that you can have the opportunity to tell us more, even as we look forward to having a Q&A session at the end. Thank you. So whoever is going to speak next can unmute, either Jemima or Caroline.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Mbugua, for that introduction, and Dr. Kinyuru as well. It's a pleasure for us to have audience with you and have this introduction session with you about IPA. I'm Jemima Okal. I work with Innovations for Poverty Action. I'll let my colleagues also introduce themselves before we dive in. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is John Ochieng. I work with
John?
IPA. Yes? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear
Yes,
you. Go ahead.
So thanks. So once again, my name is John Ochieng. I work with Innovations for Poverty Action as the policy manager. It's a pleasure to engage. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I am Caroline Niguto. I also work with Innovations for Poverty Action. I came on board about 2 months ago to implement the researcher diversification strategy in the countries that we, about 7 focus countries. Nice to meet you all.
I think we've all introduced ourselves from IPA. Back to you, Dr. Mbugua.
So actually, I just want to hand it over to you, just to go ahead with your presentation. Just feel free to proceed. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So I'll be sharing my screen so we can start off on the presentation, and allow me to switch off my video just so I can have enough bandwidth to have an uninterrupted session. Let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, you can see it. Remember, go ahead.
Just to be sure, is it on presenter view? Are you able to see the entire slide on your screen? On your screen? Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, so I'll go on to introduce Innovations for Poverty Action, and just give you some background on who we are, what we do, and what we'd like to achieve with the kind of work that we do. So IPA in full stands for Innovations for Poverty Action. We are a research, and we're an international not-for-profit research and policy organization founded in 2002 by one of our board members, the founder known as Dean Callan. So Dean Callan is one of the board members and as well as the founder of IPA. So overall, our mission as IPA is to realize more evidence and less poverty. Our mission in this case is to discover and promote effective solutions to global poverty problems. So all in all, with our vision and mission statement, we are saying that our commitment here is to discover and promote solutions that affect the ordinary human being. So this could be a range of problems that contribute to the policy, to the poverty problems that we are experiencing all over the globe. About what we do. So as I mentioned, IPA, we are a research and policy not-for-profit organization. And generally, we design and rigorously evaluate programs and problems so that we're able to discover or refine solutions and the applications together with the decision makers that we work with. So we are saying the research that we do is not purely for the purposes of finding the evidence, but we also want to get this evidence used across various sectors and as solutions to different problems. So as a summary, as you can see on the slide, IPA is widely recognized as an expert in randomized evaluations. So our research work is mainly to determine the impact of the programs or the interventions that we're trying to test out in the field. And we're saying the rigorous method that we employ most of the times is randomized controlled trials. But again, we're not limited only to RCTs. So far, since the IPA was founded, we've been able to conduct over 900 evaluations in 52 countries across the world. Sorry for the noise. I'm working from home. Please bear with me.
It's okay. Go ahead. Please, just proceed.
Yeah, so we've conducted over 900 evaluations in 52 countries across the world. And this work, of course, it's not just by IPA alone, where we can attribute it to the many partners that we're working with, mostly to design the evaluations that we conduct and to move the evidence that we achieve out of these evaluations to policy. So all in all, we're talking about being innovative in the kind of work that we do. Are we targeting specific problems or real problems, real poverty problems at whichever level? Then we run an evaluation to determine the impact of interventions so that we're able to come up with, to determine what works and what does not work. In the event that we realize that something actually works, how about going ahead to replicate it just to ascertain that the impact we achieved at one location is actually the impact that will be achieved in a different location. So some of our studies also include replications just to determine the actual impact of an intervention in different contexts. We're also saying that as part of communication, we not only work with researchers, but we also work with policymakers, because at the end of the day, this research that we do is meant to impact or to turn. We hope to turn it into actual solutions, and of course, some of these solutions really need the input of the policymakers so that they're able to be to get into the policy systems that we have. And finally, talking about scale up for the interventions that we realize are working effectively and efficiently, we want to have these interventions spread out to a larger beneficiary group. So not just in one area where the research was done, but also to have others benefit from the solutions that have been determined to work. Some of the sectors that we work in as IPA, so we work across all sectors. We are not limited, but just to mention a few, we work in the financial services sector, we work in the health sector, agriculture, education, governance and democracy, small and medium enterprises. And also just to add on a few that we've recently ventured into, we have the peace and recovery, we have consumer protection, we have human trafficking. So those are all areas that IPA is conducting research and engaging policymakers in. And again, in all these areas, we partner with the researchers from various institutions. Just to mention a few, we have the UC Berkeley, University of Nairobi, MIT. We work with government agencies. So for example, we are working closely with the Micro, Small and Enterprises Authority, the Kenya Revenue Authority, the Ministry of Agriculture, and Vision 2030, just to mention a few. Some of the institutions that fund our work include the Gates Foundation, USAID, Echidna, among others. So those are just to mention a few, but if you go on our website, you'd find lots of information on who we're working with, where we're working with, who is funding our work. So after all is said and done, what exactly are we hoping to achieve with the work that we do? At this slide here, we are just trying to analyze what the problem is. So we know we are facing many poverty problems. There are many poverty problems out there. But again, is there evidence on what actually works and what does not work to help the poor? When we talk about the poor, we are not talking financially, but the poor could be anyone that is facing any of the global poverty problems, so could be health related across all the sectors. So what evidence is there to us to back up certain interventions that work in whichever context? So at the moment, we think we see that there's limited evidence on what is working. So with that, even if there's evidence, is the evidence being used? Yeah. So whichever evidence is there, is this evidence being used to translate into better programs and policies to help the world's poor? So if we have limited evidence and limited use of the evidence that exists, it means all our programs and policies are not informed by the evidence or the facts that have been rigorously evaluated. So that means we are probably wasting a lot of time and money on ineffective programs and policies. And this still contributes to the cycle of continuous global poverty problems. So at that, IPA strategy 1 is to create stronger evidence. So not just doing research, but rigorously evaluating the interventions to ascertain impact. So about creating stronger evidence, we want to deepen the public knowledge on how to reduce poverty. So sometimes it is not a quick thing as issuing an instant solution, but still understanding the impact of certain interventions, the short-term and the long-term effect of whichever interventions that we want to apply to solve a problem. Strategy 2 is to share this evidence strategically. So after we've conducted research and we have our facts right, how are we able to influence conversations and inform decisions? That is why we are working with the policymakers to understand which the real problems or the real policy gaps, so that we're able to address through research. Once we have these findings, we again go back to discuss or inform the policymakers of the findings and how these findings could translate into policy. And finally, we're talking about equipping decision makers to use the evidence. So it's one thing to share the evidence, but it's another thing to actually empower the policymaker to be able to use that evidence to inform the policy making processes or decisions. So one thing to ponder about, if you look at the slide that is on your screen right now, it's just something that maybe you can ponder about as we go into the next session. But looking at these two, we have a case where probably a donor gives you 5,000 Kenya shillings to buy school uniforms for children in a particular school. Or you can also choose to use the 5,000 shillings to deworm children. So probably according to you, and here no answer is right or wrong, but which one would you go for? Would you want to spend your 5,000 shillings on buying school uniforms, or would you want to spend the 5,000 shillings to deworm children? So here, again, I say there's no right or wrong answer. And again, whichever answer you conclude, we are saying that IPA practically exists to provide this information so that we ensure that the resources that we have are allocated to achieving the greatest impact in fighting poverty. So in both instances, you could be addressing a problem, yes, but then a further evaluation would enable us understand which one would achieve the greatest impacts in fighting poverty. Yeah, so as we ponder on that, I'll stop there and maybe have John take over on the next slide, just to discuss more how we're translating evidence to policy. John?
Thanks, Jemima, and thanks, Dr. Mbugua and team. Mine is just to give a snippet of our policy engagement. And I want to say that we measure our success in so many ways. And of course, as an organization that is conducting research, the first success, which is at an output level, is to have valid findings. And we celebrate more when we are able to disseminate these findings to policymakers and they are able to adopt it. But finally, our greatest success lies in what policymakers use this evidence to do. And that probably is using the findings to either review existing policies or formulate new policies, or even make policy declarations. So we turn evidence into action by mobilizing and supporting policymakers through strategic dissemination of evidence, through working partnerships, and also giving them technical assistance to convert the evidence into policy. Next slide, Jemima. Yes, so how do we facilitate the use of evidence by policymakers? So number one, we make sure that there's a very strong buy-in by the stakeholders who are policymakers. And that we do by co-creating the research designs and also involve them throughout the research undertaking process, so that by the time we're disseminating the findings, there are already expectations on how the evidence is going to be used. We also make sure that our findings are accessible in various platforms, and we share the evidence proactively and in a timely manner. And we offer technical assistance to the policymakers. That could be a repetition, but we support them to actually use this evidence. And we meet them at their greatest points of need. Next slide, Jemima. So my last slide is about just to give you a highlight of some of the evidence of our impact across the world. And so number one, we've been able to turn results into actions. And I can recite a research undertaking that we conducted on school-based deworming that has been scaled up in Ethiopia, India, and Kenya. And this is reaching out to over 91 million children to date. But the second one is that we have been able to change debate on the whole issue of the cash transfers. There have been a lot of debates around the impact of cash transfers to the poor. So you find most organizations, making this intervention, but again deciding to the recipients what they need to do with the cash. So we have changed this debate by producing evidence that rather than decide for them what to do with the money, people can make decisions that can improve their lives and after that of their families. So that's a debate that is continuing being taken. And lastly, is that key stakeholders and players are using our evidence, and I can cite the British government that cited IPAs free malaria bed net study that found out that when free nets are given to the population, then they're able to take up, and when you put some cost onto it, then probably the take up or the use of such services are not really up to par. So we've been able to make that contribution, and that evidence is there out for the world to see. I think that's all. I don't want to take much of your time. Thank you so much. I take it back to Jemima, please.
Thank you, John. I think that's the end of our presentation about IPA, but we still have one more to go now on the researcher diversification strategy. So I'm hoping we can go into the second presentation before we come back to answer any questions that the participants may have. Allow me to introduce Caroline and then to go over the next presentation.
Just going to share my screen.
Yeah, we can see your screen, Caroline.
All right, thanks. Once again, thanks to Dr. Mbugua for inviting us to discuss our organization, and particularly the researcher diversification strategy, which really touches on how IPA can facilitate more studies driven by researchers in low and middle income countries. We're implementing this initiative across 7 focus countries in Africa. So in Eastern Africa, we are doing it in Kenya, Uganda, and Zambia. And in Western Africa, we are doing it in Ghana, Nigeria, Burkina Faso, and Côte d'Ivoire. So we can begin this with discussing the problem statement. Research shows that Africa produces only 1% of the world's research output. This is obviously very low and tells us that development research continues to be produced in the global north. When we look at ourselves as IPA, as the team mentioned, we have a long-standing presence in 22 countries and have been working for over 18 years with a lot of researchers. But an internal diagnosis has shown that the LMIC researchers that we work with are only 27%. Again, this is obviously very low, and if we want to continue to conduct relevant research, particularly policy relevant research, we need to engage more and better local researchers. This slide here just discusses the constraints that are faced. So they include access to funding, access to research networks, academic preparation, coaching, and mentorship. So what we find is that local researchers do have good ideas, but the funding available is limited. And in addition to that, we find that there's no access to the support that's technical and otherwise that's required to develop great proposals that can win big donor funding. In addition to that, in terms of local or domestic research funding, we're finding that African governments are beginning to offer more funding to academics, I think it's the Kenya National Research Fund provides funding, but the amounts are really low and they're not substantial enough to organize large-scale surveys. Another constraint that's here is mentors. So we find that the older, more established researchers are saturated with requests and they're not spending the time that's required to mentor younger upcoming researchers. And in addition to that, you'll find that the more established researchers want to use LMIC researchers to check a box. I'm sure some of you have faced this. By that, I mean, if, for example, a donor wants an African researcher, this researcher ends up not substantially contributing to the research, and they're more, the team just wants to sort of check that box. And so we find that there's no mentorship model that has been put together or established to make sure that researchers from Africa or from LMICs are growing and taking the place of the older researchers. Another constraint is lack of research networks. At IPA, to be honest, we simply don't know enough researchers in the countries where we work. Where we do know the researchers who are interested in pursuing development research, or rather those who are known, are well known, we find that they're saturated with requests for engagement in projects. So generally, there's just a lack of networks in the continent, as well as opportunities for researchers to meet often. So, local researchers meeting with international researchers, as well as donors for various collaborative efforts. So we seek at IPA, we seek to greatly increase our engagement with LMIC researchers and shift this current practice of social science in LMIC countries for the 3 primary reasons that are stated here. So that's addressing inequalities, higher quality research, as well as policy impact. We find that evidence that's produced from an in-country perspective by local researchers results in better policy choices, more sustainable development outcomes, and more inclusive policy debates. So this slide here discusses what IPA's strengths are, what our value proposition is. So as mentioned, we realize we've not been doing enough in engaging and collaborating with local researchers. So we worked with our colleagues, board members, etc., to come up with this researcher diversification strategy document or concept note. And the aim is to use our strong points to strengthen our engagement with local researchers, so that the research that we do is being more locally owned and locally led, within the continent. And as mentioned, we identified, the 7 focus countries. And so in terms of looking at our positioning, we have the following value proposition. So the first one is convening power. So at IPA, we work with researchers, and we believe we have great convening power in that we are the center of local and international academia. In addition to that, we work with implementing partners and we work with governments. So we can bring all these partners together to work on matchmaking, as well as building connections, and this would be across countries and between countries. Then the second value proposition or our strength is IPA as a fund manager. So we manage our own competitive funds, and so we can be viewed as a donor and can distribute funding to LMIC researchers or steer policies to ensure more funding is channeled to the right researchers within our focus countries. Some of the funds we have are in human trafficking, as well as peace and recovery. So then the third value proposition is IPA as a coach. So IPA is obviously an employer, and we see ourselves as a coach of our own staff, and then our staff as a pool of future researchers. So we have tons of research associates, research managers across the countries that we work in. So an example would be like, in Western Africa, we have maybe about 40 projects ongoing, and all these projects have an RA and an RM attached to them, and they play key roles in these projects. So we can leverage that strength because these particular staff are already writing papers with the PIs, they're getting the training that's required, and so we can continue to build their capacity. So this slide then here discusses the activities that surround the strategy that we've been discussing. So we have put them into 4 buckets or 4 building blocks. So the first one is build a network of LMIC-based researchers. So this is about bringing together the right people to create a database of researchers So knowing who does what, who's interested in development research, who's an impact evaluation researcher. So this is about really fostering networks and connections through matchmaking perspectives. The second block talks about enhanced access to funding for LMIC researchers. So the bottom line is it's difficult to conduct research without funding. And so using, as mentioned in the previous slide, using our competitive funds, we hope to target LMIC researchers, share the open calls on our website, but also through our networks. And then also, in addition to that, we hope to provide training to increase the possibilities to access the funding. So this would be things like proposal writing workshops. And also provide the coaching on the application process. That, funders can win, so that the researchers can win big, substantial donor funding. Then the third block discusses promoting a pipeline of researchers, which is twofold. So that means development of researchers within our country offices, as mentioned in the previous slide. And then in addition to that, we want to work with local universities through research collaborations. And then in addition to that, we hope to have what we're calling the Africa Internship Program that specifically targets PhD students and master's level students, and giving them the opportunity to, let's say, get their hands dirty and, participate in our projects in terms of, research design, putting together questionnaires, programming them, going to the field to collect data, conducting data analysis, and getting the opportunity to work with the PIs in terms of writing the papers and eventually getting published. We also want to create programs with universities to teach rigorous impact evaluation, things like sampling, power calculation, etc. Then the fourth block is supporting LMIC researchers with research communication and policy engagement through providing communication strategies and dissemination training to support and to amplify impact. This slide just shows an activity update on what we've been doing in the 7 focus countries that we're beginning with. So we've signed MOUs with universities and research institutes. We've conducted some RCT training and STATA training, for example, at Tomboya University. And then in Francophone West Africa, we're preparing for a matchmaking webinar series that will bring together local researchers, international researchers, and donors to discuss various topics. And then, of course, we have our internship program that's underway. Lastly, we've also been working with researchers in the various countries, local researchers, to assist in proposal development, in terms of the coaching, as well as working as a team to submit this. And as you can see, so far, we've won 3 proposals. So, want to thank you for your time. That's a big picture overview of the strategy. It would be good to hear from Dr. Mbugua and the team on basically, what you guys think would make it possible for researchers, local researchers, to constructively contribute to research and in terms of publishable research. Thanks, everyone. I think I'll hand it over to Jemima.
Thank you, Caroline, for that presentation. I think we'll hand it back to Dr. Mbugua, because I see there's some questions coming up on the chat. But Dr. Mbugua, maybe you can guide us on this as we take the questions. Thank you.
Okay, so I just want to thank you for making your presentation. And I think the purpose of this was a lot of interaction. So I just want to allow Dr. Kinyuru to moderate the discussion if that's the way to go. But I just to say that I believe that we as Jomo Kenyatta are keen on expanding research, and I know there are a lot of individuals here who have a lot of experience and interest, and I just want to give them the opportunity to make their comments or ask their questions. Dr. Kinyuru.
Thank you very much, Amos. And thank you, team from Innovations Poverty Africa, for these very informative presentations. We will take a few comments and questions, and members kindly feel free to post your questions or remarks, comments on the chat section as we proceed to have an interactive discussion. But we'll obviously be posting questions and asking questions like now, how does JKUAT fit into the picture of IPA? If I were to start, how does JKUAT fit into the picture in your own thinking or imagination? How does JKUAT as an institution, because we are doing this for the best interest of our researchers as a directorate, how do you see JKUAT fitting in the picture? Maybe we would start from there. I don't know who, Jemima maybe, or John or Carol, whoever is ready to take that up. Then we can start over the discussion from there.
Thank you, Dr. Kinyuru. I can take that, and my colleagues can chime in if they have any additional points to that. So with JKUAT, as I mentioned in my introduction, IPA partners has very many partners, and maybe along that I'll answer. There's a question on which African academic institutions we are partnering with. So yes, we partner with the various universities in Kenya. Just to mention a few: Maseno University, University of Nairobi, Kenyatta University, Masai Mara, and Tomboa University College. So these are some academic institutions we are partnering with on research. And when you're talking about research, we want to reiterate the point of co-creation of evidence, where we are not doing research for the sake of academic purposes, but largely to influence policy. So we work together with these research institutions, with these academic institutions, to identify or to design research around policy issues or policy gaps. So looking at JKUAT as a partner, we also hope to do the same, to work together in production of policy-oriented research. And when I say policy-oriented research, we are looking at research that actually addresses an issue. And in this case, engaging with the policymakers right from the beginning of identifying the problem, and then going forward to design research around the problem, and later on further engaging the policymaker to use the evidence generated out of this. Other than that, with regards to research and diversification strategy, we'd also want JKUAT to participate in the research that we conduct as among the institutions that can produce researchers to participate in the research that we produce in Kenya and in Africa, as well as in publications. So I think we are here, the partnership here will be one that we're able to bring more value to the research and policy space, as well as for personal growth for those who'd be interested in taking up research as one of their key interest areas. I don't know if my colleagues would want to add anything.
Let me just add something, Jemima. The question on how JKUAT comes in. And in summary, I want to say that our intentions are very, very clear as IPA. And I go back to Jemima's presentation that our role is to kind of seek evidence on what works so that we eradicate poverty. How do we do this? So we conduct rigorous research on existing programs. So number one, there has to be a program. And the program must have an implementer, an implementing partner. So we conduct research on existing programs. So IPA offers an opportunity for a principal investigator or principal investigators to sit and design research on a program that is existing. So the principal investigators here, research institutions like JKUAT, and I want to really say that that's where JKUAT can plug in, so that we sit down, and based on a program that is of great need or of great importance or has very high policy impact, we sit down and design a research around it. And of course, there's a donor who is going to fund the whole research undertaking. So JKUAT comes in and plugs into that space for the principal investigators. Thank you.
Thank you, John and Jemima. Are you saying that you actually develop research proposals and interest a donor, or is it that donors are always plugging into your system to look for people who are willing to work or to do research on specific areas? Or how does that work?
So just to respond to that, so we are saying that the research work that we do, we need to identify who the researcher or the PI is, who the implementing partner is, and who the donor is. So we need these three people for us to be able to conduct a successful research. So working together with JKUAT, we are not saying IPA will look for the funding, but we are hoping to do this together. So say you are interested in, you'd want to be one of the IPA researchers, and maybe you've come up with a proposal, or there's an opportunity for funding somewhere, and we're looking for interested researchers who'd want to apply for that. So in this case, maybe if you're interested, you'd want to apply for that as a researcher. And IPA in this case would also serve as a mobilizer among our pool of PIs who'd also want to be a co-PI on that. But also in the event where there is no funding, but we have a good proposal, a good research proposal, we'd source for, get in touch with also our pool of partners, implementing partners, policymakers, and donors to see who will be interested in funding that research, and which policymakers we can target with some of the policy outcomes from the research. So it is something that does not work in one particular way, but there are many options we can exploit. So we're just saying that IPA plays the central role of being a mobilizer of all the three partners, but also supporting in the development of the research research work.
Okay.
And I want to add that it is not really a straitjacket, or it's not something that operates on a single trajectory. As Jemima said, it can come in so many ways. Could maybe IPA, as the one providing that platform, can sit with JKUAT and design research around some area of need. So in that case, we have to look for funding together, or maybe a policymaker like government. You're partnering with government agencies a lot. They have expressed a need, which for us is a good opportunity for research. In that case, we also look for funding, and probably it's a funder who comes with money and says, "Look, we have this sort of funding, and we're interested in getting evidence on this particular area." So as Jemima said, it comes in so many ways.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, John. Thanks, John, for that. There's a question by Amos. He's asking, what additional examples could you provide for research that IPA has supported or is engaged in the areas of agriculture and health? In Africa, Kenya, better still if Kenya, but probably also in Africa in general.
I can take that. So again, I'd want to refer you all to the IPA website, where all the work that we've done. So there's so many, but just to mention a few that IPA has supported in the agriculture and health sector. So in agriculture, our work broadly focuses on improving technology adoption, improving food and health systems, and financial services to the farmers. So in all these three areas, we have studies that some of them have been scaled up. So one of them is called the water tanks project. So in this case, IPA partnered with a dairy circle in a region in Kenya, where the circle will provide loans to farmers to purchase water tanks for rain harvesting. So this was basically to improve the productivity of the small-scale farmers. And yes, we realized high impact results where the farmers were able to realize good returns from dairy farming. And with this, the SACCO has since scaled up this opportunity for collateralized loans to farmers to purchase water tanks. So that is one example under the agriculture sector, but there's a lot more on fertilizer use, and some of the loan products of financial services to boost farming activities in Kenya. Under the health program, I think John highlighted one on the free malaria bed nets. So this was also conducted in Kenya as well, and it contributed greatly to the Ministry of Health starting the distribution of free malaria nets to expectant women. But also alongside that, the evidence from the malaria bed study also informed other services like VCT services, which are now free, family planning services, which are now free in public hospitals. So this is just an example of subsidizing costs on some basic health needs really improve uptake. But one other one that I'd also like to mention under health is mostly on water and sanitation. So you've probably maybe had or come across chlorine dispensers at certain water points. So this was also an IPA study that was conducted a while back, and it's currently being scaled up by Evidence Action. So the main aim here was to improve safe water, access to safe water within Kenya. And IPA did this study where we installed chlorine dispensers at communal water points so that the community members are able to get chlorine to treat their water, but also to sustain the chlorine dispensers at those water points really needed their participation so that they're always they always have access to clean water and chlorine at all times. So those are just examples in the two. Okay. I think I answered question 2 on the academic institutions we're working with. We started with, yeah.
Yes, you did that.
Thank you.
So are you? I remember when this poster was posted on the JKUAT Dawns forum, there was a question about that came up about market development for innovations. Because there has been research that has been ongoing by JKUAT researchers and other people out there. And now the question came up, what about market development for the existing innovations that have happened? I don't know what your experience with such, uptake of innovations to the market, commercialization, etc. Is that something that you're also involved in, or you would probably want to partner with JKUAT to do?
Okay, so if I can give that a go. So one, I'd like to mention that IPA, we're mostly doing research. So when there are innovations, or there could be possible interventions that have solutions to certain problem. So IPA as a researcher would come in to conduct an impact evaluation on a certain innovation or intervention, just to determine the level of impact in a larger group. I want to believe some of these innovations housed within the university probably are not, or probably have been tested, but probably to what extent. So IPA would want to come in to conduct an impact evaluation just to determine or ascertain the impact. And from there, when we're talking about scale up, because we are also looking for opportunities to scale up working interventions, in this case, we'd want to partner with implementing partners. That is why for some of our studies, like the deworming and the clothing dispensers, these were scaled up by other implementing partners like Evidence Action and their other institutions. So when it comes to talking about scale up, in this case, we'd want to, again, look for an ideal implementer and donor who's able to support scale up, because IPA, we're not into scaling up the interventions ourselves, but then once the research is done, we move this to the implementing partner to scale up. So it is still a collaboration.
So this means that probably at the proposal development, there has to be that other partner who can be able to do scale up of the innovations, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. There's a question by Amos again. How can IPA enable academic researchers at JKUAT to more effectively share the research findings with policymakers? Because policy is a big deal. So our research, and you've really mentioned in your presentations that, your policy, you're geared towards, research that advises or informs policy. So what are some of the ways in which you have been able to link researchers with policymakers, or what can be done with the researchers at JKUAT in this slide?
I can take that, June. So going back to Jemama's presentation, we said we have 3 key pillars, and the first one is to generate evidence, rigorous evidence. And the second one is to share the findings strategically. That means sharing it with those people who matter, people who would eventually use it to inform policies. And the third one was to build the capacity of policymakers to use this evidence. So when in a research undertaking, when the findings come out, the findings are not entirely owned by IPA, but by the principal investigators. In this case, if we're collaborating with JKUAT in this, then it's JKUAT who will probably do the dissemination. Ours is to provide that platform, mobilize policymakers so that you share detailed findings. And then what we normally do is we follow up this by just doing a policy brief with the principal investigator's permission. You do a policy brief based on the high impact policy findings, and continue having roundtables with policymakers to ensure they take up the policy findings and use them to inform or develop new policies. So ours is creating that platform. And in other countries, they've been able to form what is called embedded labs. So if we collaborate to do some research, let's say in the health sector, and the findings are of high policy impact, then we can organize an embedded lab with the Ministry of Health, if it is a national government function. If it's some of the functions are devolved, then we also loop in some key departments from the county governments or the sector chair from the Council of Governors, just to have a technical working group that will continue those conversations around the findings to inform policies. So that's what we do.
Okay. Thank you very much.
May I add briefly on that is, so over time, we've realized there's something that also works with engaging policymakers, and this is what we call co-creation. So co-creation in this case means we want to develop research around an actual policy issue. So that means right from the beginning, if this policy issue is identified, we automatically get the buy-in from the researcher, from the policymaker. So we're not just doing research and then looking for the policymaker to give them findings on what we have, but if this research is designed around an actual area of interest for the policymaker, then they have the buy-in from the very beginning and they're able to participate in the research and as well take up the evidence you've produced because it really is in line with whatever issues they are facing. So for us to be able to effectively share our research findings, we're saying these findings have also to be relevant to the policymaker in the first place. So talking about designing the research around a policy issue. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So in line with that, do you get calls from donor communities and then you cascade down to your partner institutions? Or, I mean, is there a scenario like that? If you get a call or are there calls from specific donors and they get in touch with you, then you look for institutions down here? And do you advertise such calls to everybody or are they only available to the institutions that you're partnering with?
Caroline, do you want to take that?
So, do you just mind repeating that? When you say open calls, is it a call for researchers or is it calls for, okay, yeah.
A call for researchers, a grant call for research from Melinda Gates, for example. They have this call, they design it, and then they talk to you, tell you to look for people who can apply.
Yeah, so for such calls, we usually do circulate it within our networks and sometimes put them on our website. And, should we have researchers who are interested and want to partner with us or, need, can approach us, and once they show interest, we can provide pre-application coaching. An example is a professor from Tomboya University came to us where there was this open call. She was really interested, and so she sat together with staff from HQ, staff from the Kenya office, and together they applied for the call. And I think we're still waiting to hear, but there's been also other successful ones.
Thanks. And probably in the interest of time, because our time is now gone, would you kindly comment on capacity building opportunities for postgraduates and early career researchers? There's a question from Amos, Mbugua.
Okay. So in terms of capacity building, so we've been, we hope to partner with universities to provide trainings in terms of rigorous impact evaluation training, in terms of data analysis, etc. Other things that we hope to do is provide training to increase possibilities to access of funding. I also mentioned the pre-application coaching. And then we also hope to establish what we're calling a visiting researcher program. So an example would be, for example, a professor from Berkeley University, just as an example, would come spend a semester at JKUAT and, probably either, teach certain things, courses, as well as sit down with, early year career researchers and sort of mentor them through the process, help them with applications, etc.
Okay, thank you. Professor Naomi Maina is the Director of Grants at JKUAT. Kindly go ahead, Prof, with your comment or question, please. Yes, please go ahead, Prof.
1 minute.
Hello, Prof.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Kimuru. Sorry, I am not able to type a message, so I thought that I'll just voice it, and thank you for accepting me to voice it.
Please, thank you.
Now, I think this is very, very good webinar and information from IPA. And indeed, I think JQuat can benefit quite a lot. I have seen very many areas of benefit. And I think I missed something at the beginning, and maybe I'll ask a question on the IPA. Is it a non-governmental organization? Is it which country is it linked to? UK, US? I think I missed something. I came in a bit late. Then I would like to also ask, we have KIPLA in Kenya, the Kenya Institute of Public Policy Research and Analysis. And I would like to know how IPA is linking up with this Institute for Policy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Naomi. Jemima or John or Carol, please go ahead. You want to take that up?
Jemima, can you respond to the first one? I'll respond to the KIPRA question.
Yeah, so IPA, as I mentioned, we are a not-for-profit organization. So we're not an NGO. Neither we are a government institution. We are a not-for-profit organization. We are headquartered in the US, but we also have a presence in 3 continents: Africa, Asia, Southern America. In Kenya, yes, we have a wider presence with many more country offices compared to the other continents, with the IPA Kenya being the largest country office by the fact that we host the largest number of active research projects within Africa.
Thank you. And so KIPRA, the only difference between KIPRA and IPA is that KIPRA is a government parastatal, and its key mandate is to support government departments or government entities on policy discourse. So we are not complementing KIPRA, but we are leveraging on each other's uniqueness in approach. We are with them in some forums, like there's a forum, Christian Education for Evidence Action, that is generating research, policy research in the education sector. So what we do is we partner with government entities, and so it's upon them when they feel free that when they think that now at this point we need to look in KIPRA, just like they do with the National Bureau of Statistics, then there's that flexibility.
Thank you so much, John. Maybe one last one as we conclude this meeting. You mentioned something to do with the matchmaking webinar series. Would you kindly comment on that as we conclude, ladies and gentlemen?
Yeah, sure.
Who is involved? How can JQuat come in?
Yes, so this particular matchmaking webinar series that we're hoping to have is in Francophone West Africa, but we've been discussing with Jemima and John and about having one in Kenya, where we would like to bring local researchers as well as international researchers and donors together, probably have 3 series where we have each of them individually, and then bring everybody together to discuss, just, the barriers of research and how people can collaborate better, and, how local researchers can probably publish more. We haven't set the agenda. We are more than happy to collaborate with JQuat in this. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we'll be very interested to participate in that as we expose our researchers to more networks and opportunities out there. Okay. So maybe we could have you, Jemima, you could post the company email here if there are people who are asking for the email for them to be able to reach you. And probably ask if Amos has something to add as we wind up. Amos, please.
Mine is just to thank everybody who was able to come and participate, and also to thank the IPA team for the presentation and the response to the questions. I think going forward, we will hopefully have more discussions in terms of how a lot of the various ideas can be solidified, and that a lot more of the members of staff at JKUAT can engage in ways that are mutually beneficial. But just want to thank everybody and thank Dr. Kinyuru for moderating. Thank you.
So thank you so much, guys. We really appreciate your time and effort to be here. I think the email the email has been posted. It's info-kenya@povertyaction.org. So for further discussions, you can take that email and you can write to them. You can also reach out to Dr. Amos Mbugua, who is the link person from the College of Health Sciences. And thank you so much. I think we want to stop it here. Thank you in the interest of time, but God giving us another opportunity, we'll definitely bring these guys back to be able to learn together. So thank you very much. God bless you and have a great afternoon. Bye.
Thanks everyone for your time.
Thank you.
Asante. Okay, bye.